Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar. We're going to be featuring on-site health and safety, and I'm really excited to share this with you. We're working with on-site health and safety to open up shop in Hawaii to provide services to our members. This is a service that we kind of had a while ago, and the former provider has left Hawaii, so it was something that was missing. And a number of our safety committee members advocated for bringing this company into Hawaii. And so, they thankfully they agreed and they're taking a shot and coming in and entering our market. So, really excited for you to hear about all the services they provide. And I'm going to introduce Kelly Davis. She is the national account rep for onsite health and safety, and also Christina Richards, and she is the senior operations manager for OSHS. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly and Christina. Okay.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today. I'm going to go over our services that we have to offer. Our biggest one that everybody's excited about is our mobile first aid injury response. I'll start there and then I'll pass it over to Christina to talk about all our other services that we have to offer. So majority of our services that we do are dispatched. Well, all of our services are dispatched, and they're dispatched 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's going to be our first aid injury response, our drug testing, our respiratory fit testing, audiometric testing, wellness screening, which is kind of like a pre-employment physical, similar to that, CPR first aid training, a bunch of other trainings that we'll go through a little bit later, blood draws, contract safety personnel. That is when you have a really large job and you want a technician there all the time rather than being dispatched. So we can do that as well. And then COVID testing. So we are located in 21 states. On Oahu, we just opened up in January. So we're really excited to join Oahu and help out with the industry there. We can provide services to any industry. It doesn't really matter what industry it is. It can be construction, food service, maritime, any one of those industries. As long as you have employees, we can provide service. So as you know, injuries are basically, when they become recordable, they're essentially start affecting your XMOD, right? Which can cause your workers' compensation rates to go up. It can be counted by prospective customers if you're bidding for jobs, things like that. Another kind of disadvantage to having an injury is typically you have a loss of production because somebody's injured and maybe their direct supervisor has to take them to the clinic, to get seen for that injury. So there can be a long wait time there. Some of the things that really affect the injuries are going to be, like if it's a light duty, that'll cause it to be a recordable. Sometimes medication is prescribed. Sometimes there's lost time away from the job site. They need to take, a week off or something like that. All of those situations can negatively impact your company by essentially causing, causing it to become a recordable. So there's a couple of options out there. There's a self-performed where essentially, you have a Band-Aid in the first aid kit. Somebody cuts their finger, they go over and they put the Band-Aid on themselves, or maybe a safety person on the site will help them. Then you have doctors who provide medical care, essentially with first aid. And Christina, would you mind taking over for a second?
Absolutely. So your second option is medical first aid. So this is whenever you have a doctor that's willing to stay within those first aid guidelines, right? So they necessarily don't have to do stitches. They can do steri strips or something along those lines where it's still considered first aid. It's just provided by a doctor. A lot of times companies will have a doctor that's connected with their company that they always send to. And then you have contracted providers. So that's non-medical first aid, and that's what on-site is. So this is a company that can come out that has those standards, that knows how to work with first aid, staying within that OSHA definition, right? So they're not doing anything that's a medical procedure. It's all going to be first aid. It's going to be what a safety person can do, but just more of an aggressive version of first aid.
Thank you, Christina. So we always like to remind people when to call 911 versus when to call us. So anytime you have a loss of consciousness, there's a possible spinal injury, any airway or breathing or circulatory compromise, any serious burns to the face or the eyes, or large burns, which we like to say is like bigger than the palm of your hand, and then any obvious long bone fractures. So if you can tell that their arm or their leg is broken, it's disformed, or there's a bone sticking out or something like that, you want to assume that the bone is cut and maybe cutting into some arteries. So for those situations, you want to call 911. Any other situation, typically you can call us. That's going to be abrasions, lacerations, hematomas, which is a bruise, avulsions, which is a skin flap, and I'll show you guys a great picture later. Any kind of smaller burns, foreign bodies like a splinter or something in the eye, any neck or back pain, any extremity injury like a hurt wrist, or my shoulder hurts or something like that. Heat illness, as long as they're not confused and disoriented, and any unknown illness, same thing. As long as they're not confused and disoriented, we can come out and take a look at that. So how it works, okay? You get an injury, you call our dispatch. Our dispatch are going to take the call, and they're going to ask like a series of questions, right? Kind of like a triage. If it's an ankle per se, they'll say, can they walk on it? Is it swollen? Is it deformed? They're going to ask those types of questions. Right then and there, they're going to determine, hey, this is a first aid. We're going to send a tech out. Here's your ETA. Let's just say, they're like, hey, this is beyond first aid. You got to take them to the clinic. There's no charge to call and find out what to do, right? We're going to tell you, yes, we can respond to that, or no, take them straight to the clinic, right? Once you get your ETA, the technician's going to come en route. They're going to arrive on site. They're going to assess that injury. They're going to treat that injury. Another thing that they do that's really cool is they're going to educate that employee on that injury. So say they have a laceration, they're going to teach them like signs of infection to look for, how to clean it, when to clean it, when to air it out, how to cover it, and they're going to give them some supplies to take with them. So once we leave, they have the stuff they need to manage that injury. We're also going to do a first aid report. Now, the first aid report doesn't get given to the direct contact right away. It's going to go through our processing center, and it'll be delivered 24 to 48 hours later, and it's going to go to the designated person for your company. After that, we'll follow up with a phone call. Typically, we call 24 to 48 hours later. We're either going to call the employee or their direct supervisor to find out how they're doing. If they're doing great, that's awesome. Okay. If they're not doing good, maybe they're like, hey, my cut looks a little weird. We can always set up an in-person follow-up visit. So that's kind of the process of how that works. Now, this year, or in 2024, it's 2025 now, we added mobile x-ray, which is really cool. So if you have somebody who, really wants an x-ray, or you feel it needs an x-ray, or maybe the technician feels it needs an x-ray, you let the technician know. They can set that up, and then we'll either do one of two things: either dispatch a mobile x-ray technician to the site, or we'll send them to the nearest local imaging facility, whatever one's going to be faster, more efficient in that situation. Okay. The cost for that is a direct billing cost. It's $7.99 for the x-ray. If you want an x-ray, like after the tech leaves and you decide you need an x-ray, you can always call us back out, and we can get that set up for you. What's included in the x-ray is the x-ray itself, the reading of the x-ray, and a consultation with a telemed doctor. So all of that's included in that price. So our typical response time for us to respond to injuries averages about an hour. Now, for you guys, the island's not huge, so I don't see a lot of extended ETAs happening, but in the event there is an extended ETA, we have what's called telehealth. Essentially what that is let's just say we're going to be an hour and a half, and maybe that employee's panicking a little bit, and it's like, oh, I need to be seen. I can't wait that long, whatever it may be. you just ask for a telehealth and they'll get a video call set up with one of our technicians until our other technician shows up in person. If you use telehealth in conjunction with us showing up in person, there's no additional fees. So I strongly recommend, if you have a situation like that, that you use the telehealth service. So it works essentially the same. The only difference is while the technician is en route to show up at the site, we'll set up that telehealth consultation. You will get a first aid report for that as well, and the one when we show up in person. I also think this is really important. Employees always have a choice whether they, want medical care or not. So we have a declination at the end of every first aid report that asks them, do you still wish to seek medical care, or you do not wish to seek medical care at this time? They'll initial that and sign that. So that's really helpful for you guys because it's telling them that they have a choice, so they know at that point in time. The other thing that it's really good for is, like, let's just say you have a back injury. We go out, we take care of the back injury. 2-3 weeks later down the road, they're like, hey, it's still bothering me. I want to seek medical care. You have documentation showing that you did do something when the injury first initially happened, right? So you have that. Kind of helps in two different ways. The one thing that we will give out immediately following the injury is a status update. We're going to send that to the designated person that you guys set up to receive it, but it's going to basically say what our recommendations are. Either return to work as directed or seek further medical care. Return to work as directed, it's going to be what you're going to see most of the time if somebody, is good with their first aid and they don't want medical care. On the other hand, you might see further medical evaluation if, the employee wants it, or or we see as a technician, something's not right and we do think they need to get medical care. So you're not going to see that very often, but it will happen from time to time. So now I'm going to show you guys the good stuff. I'm going to show you some photos. So hopefully, you guys don't get queasy. If you do, please shut your eyes and just maybe listen. Okay. So here we have a finger laceration. So this one's pretty mild. Essentially, the tech came out, cleaned it, and this pictures kind of show you through the process, closed it, and then the employee actually opted for a tetanus shot. So we got that scheduled for one of our technicians to come out and provide a tetanus shot. And then we drug tested the employee according to their company policy, and they returned to work. Here's just another example of a typical laceration we see on a day-to-day, just kind of showing you through the process there. This one here is a grinder injury. It's a little bit of a laceration and a burn all in one. So you can kind of see the before and after treating that. And then here's an avulsion. I really like this one because it's a good kind of story or pictures to show you when you might need a follow-up visit. So we had the initial visit, was pretty severe, but still first aid. And then we came in person for a second visit to follow up, and then that third visit to follow up. So 3 visits total. This one here is a head laceration. The technician will always go out and check for signs of concussions and things like that. If they don't have any of that, they're going to go ahead and treat the injury. And it's really nice because this employee actually gave us the final picture here. So he didn't have minimal scarring. One of the things that OSHA dictates is first aid is steri-strips. So we use steri-strips and glue to close wounds. And essentially, the great thing about steri-strips is it kind of minimizes scarring, and it's really good for these types of injuries. Now, this one here is an interesting story. This is a hot oil burn from a restaurant. This employee refused medical care, but the company had to do something, so they called us. And we actually would normally say, hey, this should go straight to the clinic. But because he didn't want medical care, we were like, yes, we'll help. So over the course of 3 months, I'm not even sure how many times we went out, but we went out several times and were able to treat this hot oil burn here. So here's our stats over the last 6 years. Every year we do more and more injuries. And our status kind of stays like about 89, 90% are managed with first aid, meaning they never go on to become a recordable. They're treated in the field. In 2024, since we introduced that X-ray program. I do believe those stats are going to go up. They're finalizing those stats now, so I don't have them yet, but if you need them, I can get them for you. But over the last 6 years, we managed to treat 89.68% with first aid. So this kind of breaks it down by injuries. I know typically there's a lot of lacerations we see. About 93% were managed with first aid. A lot of soft tissue injuries like back pain. Those can be a little bit trickier to treat. We're still up in the 83% range. And then you're looking at, things like extremity injuries. Now that we have the X-ray program, that number has definitely increased, but we're still waiting on the final number. All right, so I'm going to see just a few more scenarios here for you. So this one, was treated with first aid as well. We actually had to shave this person's head, which I love because I'm not a barber, but we go ahead and take care of that, clean it up and close it. And he was drug tested and returned to work. And then here's another one. This one here, it looks serious, but it wasn't affecting any underlying structure. You still have full range of motion. There was no tendons or anything serious affected. So you're able to clean that and close that one up as well. So picture one here would be a burn, like a 3rd-degree burn that would be more serious. You'd want to call 911 for. And obviously picture 2, we can handle those, no problem. So just kind of reminder, only about 10% of non-life-threatening injuries actually need medical or in-clinic care. And with aggressive first aid, you can really take care of a lot of those injuries from becoming recordables. Does anybody have any questions?
Hey gang, I forgot to mention earlier that the chat appears to be disabled. So if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. And while we're waiting for people to write questions in, Kelly, maybe can you speak to the qualifications of the first aid or the people who are going to come to the job site?
Definitely. That's a great point. So all of our technicians have experience as either EMTs, LVNs, nurses, paramedics, military medics, and then they also go through a really intense training program once they get hired with on-site health and safety. All right. I guess we can answer all the questions here at the end, Christina, when they get the Q&As. I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to you.
Oh, sorry, Kelly. There's one question here. Do you all provide HEP shots? HEP?
I'm sorry, what was that?
You all provide HEP shots? HEP?
Hepatitis?
Is it hepatitis?
Yeah. If you're referring to hepatitis, yes, we can do vaccinations for hepatitis.
Next question. What is the typical response time?
Typical response time averages about an hour.
Also, can you show or go over costs per injury?
Anybody who wants the cost for injury, it's a flat rate. I will definitely send that out to you afterwards, for sure, if you want any of that information.
And then, do you perform DOT physical exam?
Yes, Christina will talk about that here shortly.
Okay, and more questions coming in. So is it your plan to find trained local techs to manage this program, or will you or other managers be taking turns residing here?
Take that one, Kelly.
Go ahead.
So that's going to be a combination of both. So we are looking to hire locally. Our program, it does require a lot of training. They go through at least minimum 2 weeks of training where they have to do in-person academy, learning how to do first aid, staying within those OSHA guidelines, and then they have to do ride-alongs in one of our busier areas, usually Northern California, because we run typically a lot of injuries up there. We don't want to just send them in the field without knowledge about how to manage the injuries. While they all come from some sort of background, nursing, paramedics, they just need to kind of take that down and go back to a first aid standpoint. So we will hire somebody locally, but they're going to have to go through training. So in the interim, we are rotating managers from within our company in and out to run calls while we're opening. During the first couple months, we'll rotate managers in.
Thanks. Few more questions. Where was I? If you are called and go out and the person refuses treatment, is there a cost?
So we do charge for if you cancel before we arrive up to 20 minutes before we arrive, we don't charge you for that. But if it's within 20 minutes of us arriving or the tech has already arrived on scene, we do charge what we call a dry run fee, and that's just to cover the cost of the tech driving out there for fuel and the hourly fees that we have to charge. I think it's $85.
Okay, how many techs do you have on island?
So that's kind of a hard question. So we start off with 1 to 2 techs managing the area. Right now, we're still in our opening week, so it's kind of going to depend on call volume. 2 is what we've kind of learned is the average to cover the area 24 hours a day. But if the call volume goes up in certain areas, we will just start adding techs on as those calls increase. So like Missouri started with 2 technicians. We now have 10 because the call volume got so high. So as the call volume builds and the use is more, we'll find that sweet spot of how many technicians we can have on the island.
The next question is, do you conduct the drug and alcohol testing yourselves, or do they take them to a facility?
We perform it on site. And I'll
Um,
here in a minute.
and how soon will y'all be ready to start responding to first aid calls in Honolulu?
Last Monday.
Okay.
We're ready.
Responding.
We're ready. Yep, we're already there. We already have technicians on the island ready to respond to first aid and any of our services.
If you are requested to visit a neighbor island for training or respiratory fit testing, etc., will that remove one of the 2 available techs on Oahu, or will you send another person to fill that position?
It's going to kind of depend. Usually we would send somebody that's not on the island just because of they're going to be needed on Oahu. It's all going to be depending on calls, but we can send to other islands. I know we've done work on Maui before we even considered opening in Oahu. And that was just, covering the travel costs for the tech to go, but we're pretty open. We'll go anywhere as long as you're willing to cover the cost for our tech to get there and do the job.
And then what's the procedure for positive drug tests?
So it's going to kind of depend, but so if you're doing an immediate drug test, which is the rapid results. So if you have a rapid result drug test, it has to go to the lab for confirmation testing. So we collect it all on site and send it to a lab. Once it goes to the lab, it gets resulted out. If for any reason it's considered a positive drug test, we do have an in-house MRO that can give the results and sign off on those. Or if you guys within your own company have your own MRO, we'll use yours and send it to your lab, and then they'll do that resulting process. DOT is an automatic collection, so we would collect it and it would still go through that same process.
Okay, those are all the questions for now.
Perfect.
And so we'll let Christina go on to her part.
Thank you.
All right, so now that we've gone through the injuries, we're going to kind of go on to the other services that we offer. I know I've kind of answered a little bit of questions here, but I'll try to build on that a little bit. So we do offer drug testing, pre-employment, post-accident, reasonable suspicion, random, follow-up, return to duty. All the drug testing is based on a protocol that you set up within on-site. So we ask you to set up a protocol, and I know we'll kind of hit that in a little bit, but in that protocol, it's going to be based on whatever you want, right? Whatever your company policy is for drug testing. Some companies do non-DOT, some are required to do DOT. Some have their own lab and own MRO in-house, or they use a TPA, a third-party administrator, to kind of handle their drug testing program. We work with all of those. Some have no idea what they want to do with drug testing and use our in-house stuff. That is fine as well. We're pretty open to working with whatever you need us to do. So this is also another service that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So for reasonable suspicion and PA testing, we say that our average is 2 hours or less. Now, with just now opening on Oahu, right now that's going to be a lot less. And the reason we put it at 2 hours or less is because injuries are going to always take priority. You're still within that 3-hour window for your post-accident testing that you have to have that the DOT dictates, but it gives us a little bit more time to make sure that we're taking care of the injuries before just the drug screens. But a lot of time we still see that response time is still within the hour, but we give us a little leeway for 2 hours or less. Now, if you have a situation where maybe this happened on a job site and it took a while for them to report it, and now you're already at that 1.5 hour window and you need us to respond faster, we're definitely willing to accommodate that. We just have that average still at 2 hours. Just point out, it's just an average. I was on the island last week responding to injuries. I made it to an injury in 20 minutes and I made it to one in 45 minutes. So it just kind of depends on what's going on at the time of the call. That's why we always stay within that 1 hour period. We do offer different types of, we have the immediate kits, which are your rapid results. It's just a dip card like that it's shown on the screen. We dip the urine and it gives us the results right there. We offer DOT, non-DOT collections. We also offer saliva swabs. Those are kind of becoming more popular. You also have saliva collections, hair follicle testing, depending on what type of job you're on. And then we also offer breath alcohol testing. Kelly, you can go to the next slide. Respiratory services. So a lot of job sites, depending on what type of material you're working with, your employees might be required to wear a respirator. In order to have that employee wear a respirator, you have to have them medically cleared. Sometimes they have to have a PFT, and then they have to be fitted for that type of mask. So we offer all of these services at the job site. So we come out, our technicians have a standing order from a physician. We have them fill out the medical clearance paperwork. We are required to do a PFT. Now, you might not require one for your employee, but we are required in order to clear them to do a PFT. And then we do the fit test on site as well as the training. Before we leave, we give them a card that shows that they were fit, or if they've already been medically cleared, just fit tested, and then what type of mask they're fitted for so that they're within the OSHA compliance. It just saves time, keeps you where you're in compliance with all of the OSHA regulations, and it happens right there on the job site. Next, Kelly. Other services we offer, so audio services. So if you have to have a hearing conservation training, we offer that as well. Baseline annual testing for the audio. Now we don't show up in one of those large vans that has 20 different audio machines. We do it within usually some sort of building or a room. It has to be below 40 decibels. So we come in and do your annual testing, or if they need it for something else. And then the wellness testing, like Kelly mentioned in the beginning, this is more of a pre-employment. So what this is just kind of creates a baseline for whenever you hire your employees. We can customize it. We have a lot of companies that customize it where they have to have certain things. They maybe have to have a lift test, or all their employees have to have an audio test. Some, they all have to have respiratory. So we're willing to kind of work around what you need for all your pre-employment. But it stops you from getting false claims. So whenever you do this, you might have an employee that writes on the documentation, oh, I've had some issues with my knee before. And they note it whenever they're doing the range of motion exercises. So that 6 months down the line, that employee says, oh, I got hurt on the job site, now I have knee pain. You've already got it documented that happened before they even started with your company. So we don't determine if they're eligible for hire. This is just gathering information so that you're aware once you've already hired them before they start in the field. Next. We do offer health and safety training as classes as well. So these are kind of just our main list of classes. These are our most common classes that we used. We do offer additional and custom classes. If you have something that you have to have for your employees. I know one that's not on here is an emergency response management class. That one's been requested a lot. It's a lot for trauma injuries, and if you have to use a tourniquet, and what happens if you have a dismemberment. So that's another class that's not on here. All of our classes can be taught in English or Spanish. We offer some of our technicians that are in Spanish. You speak Spanish. Next class, or next slide, Kelly. So this is another division within onsite. We call it our environmental occupational services. So it's just a specialized team. It's not anything, it's just a fancy way for us to know within our company, our specialized services. So we can do air sampling for silica, noise monitoring, just some things that we can do within onsite if you're needed. Next slide, Kelly. I want to get into the other stuff. All right, and then Pulsate. So Pulsate is a partner company with Onsite. So Onsite is that non-medical version. We talked about first aid and the things that we do. We work under OSHA guidelines. So Pulsate is our help with the medical side. So they handle all of our physicals that we have to have a medical director under. So silica and asbestos physicals that require mobile x-rays and a doctor or physician sign off are through Pulsate. And then as of January 1st, 2025, we can now offer DOT physicals. So that one's been kind of something new and hot. We offer it directly on your job site. The technician comes out, does all the data collection, and then a telemed is scheduled with a physician to review the paperwork and anything that might have come up in the physical. Next slide. So as we've mentioned many times before, our communication center is open 24 hours, 7 days a week. We do have a number that you can call, an 866 number. There's always staffing on that phone number. We do also, some people don't like to sit and wait on the phone, even if it's 30 seconds, it's a lot more time. So we do have an option to put in your request online. Now that request is not monitored after hours. I do recommend to people, you can still put in the online request after hours and then just call the 866 number and just say, hey, I put in a request online. Our overnight dispatchers do other admin duties at night, so they're not constantly monitoring the board. But during the daytime, 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., it's monitored during all that time, so you don't have to call in. All right, how do you sign up? So there are no sign up fees. We don't do a monthly retainer. We don't do a contract. All you have to do is you're going to only be billed whenever you use the service. So we talked about that protocol. The protocol is not for us to just send you a bill after you sign it up. So that protocol is used so that you don't have to stress or worry whenever you have to make that first service call. So whenever you call in for the first time, you have the technician come out and you're worried, well, where does the paperwork go? Where does the billing go? If you already have a protocol set up, you don't have to stress about that. And one thing that I've had somebody mention to me is, do you have to have a protocol set up? You don't. It just makes it easier so that we're not, sending it to the person that's not supposed to be receiving drug screen results just because they're a foreman on a site and they requested service. It just makes sure it goes to the right person. But we're never going to decline you service if you call and we don't see a protocol. We're always going to service you no matter what. Next slide. All right, I saw some questions pop up, I thought.
Yes, I can read the questions to you.
Okay.
Let's see. First question is, can you share this PowerPoint with us?
Yes, we will be willing to share a PowerPoint with you.
Okay, and we're also recording this webinar so you guys can watch it back later if you would like to. Gladys will be sending that out later. Next question, can you do a DOT physical for commercial drivers?
Yes.
Can you do air sampling for lead also?
I believe we can. I don't know if I've ever seen it recently, but if we can do it for silica and asbestos, I would assume lead is on there too.
And then is the telehealth app option an app? How do we access that service?
So it's currently not an app. So how it is our injury department team will reach out via phone call. And usually it depends on who calls in the request. Usually it's the safety person that's with the employee. They'll call them, offer the telehealth, or if you've requested one, they'll call the employee directly. And usually it starts out as a phone call and then it changes to a video. So when I'm doing telehealth calls, depends on what kind of phone the person has. I have an iPhone, so if they have an iPhone, I video chat, I FaceTime with them. If they don't, or we can set up, what we use Google Meets. We can send that employee a link that they can get on. Now, typically telehealth don't always have to be video, kind of depends on the injury. If it's a laceration, I definitely want it to be video. I want to be able to see it. If it's back pain, maybe depends on if they're having swelling, what kind of information that they're giving me will determine if I need to do any sort of video. Heat illness, don't really need to do a video as well. So, but that's all set up whenever you call in, they'll do either a Google Meet or a FaceTime, depending.
Hey, I'm not seeing any other questions. Do you guys have any other questions here?
So I saw
Feel free to
the
type
question
those in.
about the cost per injury. I know Kelly's gonna send out the brochures as well, just so you can kind of see our pricing list. Something that we didn't mention was that, so all of our injuries, it's the same price. It doesn't matter if you have a laceration or if you have a back pain. It's just a flat rate price for us to do the injury response. It also doesn't matter how far within the island. So we're not going to charge mileage. It's just a flat fee for that.
Okay, I don't think there are any other questions. So I do want to share that Onsite Health and Safety has also joined GCA, and they are members of the safety committee as well. So they've been attending the safety committee meetings. So if you guys have any other questions I would like to speak to Christina or Kelly or any of their other folks, you can always hop in on a safety committee meeting. Just contact Lattice if you're not already on the invite list for those meetings. And then at the end, when the webinar closes out, there's going to be a brief survey. And if you would like Onsite Health and Safety to contact you for more information, or you just have additional questions that you'd like to ask, then there's a section for you to fill in your contact information and your name and your email address and your phone. So please go ahead and take the survey and put your information in there if you would like Onsite Health and Safety to contact you directly. All righty. Well, thank you both for your time and for sharing this. I think we're really excited, and I know our safety committee is super stoked to have you guys here. So if you guys have any questions at all, there's Kelly's contact information on the screen. You can also contact Gladys if you need to, or me. We'll make sure that we get you in touch with them if there's more information that you'd like. Okay, well, thanks everyone and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.